By PC, pod or pad you're listening to and quite possibly watching Paid to Play. I'm Rob Farker, your host for this weekly exploration of the dangerous idea that bringing your whole self, especially the parts of you that some might consider weird, geeky or odd, into your income generating life is the best thing you can do. It might not be easy, but it's easier than we think and even fear, and I am here to show you how. In between my fortnightly chats with career crazies and income iconoclasts, I like to talk about my own efforts to find the value to others in the things that I love doing and the struggle to muster the courage to ask others to pay me to do those things. I think it's easy to talk with others about it, but sometimes when you're listening to podcasts like these, it's nice to know that the person running the podcast is in the trenches with you. So, the last couple of weeks have been fairly quiet. I had a week off after Tropicon, which I discussed in my last episode. My last off-week episode, which was episode 50, and wound up pretty busy with some work around the house and in the backyard. We had a party over our place the week after Tropicon, so there was a lot of prep work and organisation, and also, as I mentioned on the Society for Doing Things weblog, which is my personal weblog I maintain as a side project from Paid to Play, I have gotten back into doing some gardening work in the effort to become self-sufficient and reduce our general grocery bills a bit. The beds are coming along fantastic, and my main thing right at the moment is to get into the habit of maintaining them. So it's meant that with regards to Fiverr, I put my gigs on vacation hold while Tropicon was on, and I will have to confess that I've not taken that hold off yet. So by the time this gets out, I should have done that, and we'll see if that generates me any more gigs. Things have also been fairly quiet on the other income generating fronts. Because of Tropicon and other events, I've not been in touch with my friends in the States who I have been organising some freelance voice work with, and they were unfortunately unable to get together with me yesterday due to illness, so we've put that off again for the next week. And yes, Patreon itself, its next pay cycle comes around in another week's time, so I'll actually be able to report on that, the income that I'm getting from this podcast for episode 54. So really, the feeling this is going to be a fairly short episode, which will be a bit of an achievement in and of itself. Unfortunately, I don't have any mailbag either. I did put the call out, but so far things have been fairly quiet on the response front. So nothing in particular to answer in terms of feedback or questions from you listeners. So please, if you are listening to or watching this and you do have any questions about getting paid to play, whether it's about this podcast or any of the guests I've had on previously, then shoot them through to me, whether it's on Facebook, via email. You can email me at podcast@robf.com.au, or my various other social media outlets, which I will get to again at the end of this episode. So in that case, we'll pop straight into musings. And one thing I did want to talk about this episode was the idea of starting with what you're already doing. I think when a lot of people start considering the idea of getting paid to play, they immediately start thinking about adding something new, or maybe something that they've not done in a while, to their repertoire of things that they're already doing in order to get paid to play for it. The idea, the feeling behind it, I think, is that you need to be doing something a little bit different from what you already have been, or else you would have been getting paid to do that separately already. It's kind of a tricky one, because there is that pressure to, again, start something brand spanking new, and then there is that worry that you're doing something that is outside your current skill set. It is unfamiliar, so there's going to be that extra workload of building that skill. And I guess on one hand, there is nothing wrong with that. If you want to get paid to play and you do want it to be something new, there is that lovely attraction of the novelty of doing that thing and experiencing it. But on the other hand, there is that point that sooner or later the novel thing is going to become the regular thing. You might lose interest in it once the novelty wears off. So perhaps it's worth looking at the things that you do already do, and maybe the ways that you are actually playing in doing those things. With me, though, one of the avenues that I've tried to explore at various times is freelance writing. And I think there has been that thing that I am a writer. I have done lots of writing for various things in my time, but it has been tricky doing writing on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. So that's kind of the other side of the coin of start with what you're already doing, is taking a thing that you perhaps love and that you do as a hobby and trying to make it a regular and consistent thing, which again is kind of tricky. Part of doing what you love is the spontaneity of doing it, the fact that you do it whenever the muse strikes, and in the meantime you perhaps don't worry about it too much. But if there is one thing about getting paid to play, is that perhaps you need to reassure people that you are going to be there for them and that you are doing your thing on a regular basis. And there is also that idea about practicing your craft. If people can see that you're doing your thing and that you are of a consistent level of quality about it, it makes them more keen on hiring you. I do have the feeling I'm spouting kind of conventional wisdom here, and that I am maybe missing out on something. It's hard to put words around the idea that part of the crazy aspect of getting paid to play that I want to emphasize a bit is trying to make sure it is driven by that passion, and sometimes getting something down and done is maybe better than putting too much polish on it, that perhaps polishing can remove perhaps some raw honesty that maybe people are actually looking for but don't know yet. It is a tough one, but with me, when it comes to writing, I am looking at trying to get back onto that on a regular basis. I do write the notes for the shows and for the posts that go up on paid2play.com.au, but they're small chunks of writing, and I kind of want to play with blogging a little bit more and getting back into that. I've been making some progress. I think I've perhaps shown pictures of this, which is what I call my journal of small things. I've been trying to keep it updated on a slightly more regular basis than I have in the recent past. And it's a good way of generating material for a blog, especially one where I'm trying to talk about getting into habits and doing things consistently, which is pretty much what the Society for Doing Things is about. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet that has been knocking around in my head about this episode, I've talked about other people trusting you a few minutes ago, that you are demonstrating that you will keep showing up to do the thing that you love doing, so that when they employ you to do it, they can trust that you will deliver for them on a timely basis. But there is also that aspect of trusting yourself. If you can carve out a chunk of time in your schedule, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, to do that thing, you can sort of make a note of ideas, write them down somewhere, and trust that there is going to be a regular time when you will actually come back to those notes, go through them, prune them down, check out the ones that seemed like a good idea at the time and now don't make any sense to you at all, and develop the ones that are making a lot of sense to you at that time that you've set for yourself to go back and revisit and get working. So I think perhaps that's my real point about start with what we're already doing, is make sure that you organise it, that you are giving yourself a regular time, and then when you get to that regular time, sit down, try and clear out your head and your desktop and your general space as much as possible, especially if you're working on a computer. It is so very tempting when you're firing up a browser-based information dump while you're there to just have a quick look at Facebook or Twitter and see what else is going on. To try and develop a little bit of that I hate that word self-discipline, because there is this part of me that sort of fights against that a little bit, that says, why the heck do you need self-discipline if you're doing something that you really love? But I guess it's just that idea of, maybe discipline is the wrong word, self-support, giving yourself a bit of a hand, because procrastination is a real thing, distractions are real things, and there's nothing more tempting, especially with things like Facebook and Twitter, to keep up with other people and keep in touch with your friends and see what little gifts they've left you in written and photographic form on their Twitter feeds and their Facebook profiles and the like. So I have the feeling again I've drifted off point a little bit, but yeah, overall, try and worry less about trying to add something new to your repertoire, and just concentrate on doing something that you're already doing and making it regular, and build the trust in yourself that you are going to keep doing it on a regular basis, that you will keep coming back to it and keep working on it and keep getting better at it. So then you'll feel like when you do finally come to that point where you are standing by your play, that you can really be confident in standing by it. There'll always be that little doubting voice in the back of your head, that imposter syndrome that says, what if they find out that, what if I suddenly lose interest and the people whom I'm working for find out about it and they realise that I'm not really as committed to it as I say I am, that I'm faking it, all that kind of thing. That will always be there. It will probably never go away. It's not gone away for me, and I do still struggle with it. I suppose that's why things have been a little bit quiet for me on the paid-to-play front for the last couple of weeks, because I sort of have let other things get in the way of just making sure that I do the things that I do already in that time that I've made for myself. It's an ongoing struggle, but when it does come time to stand by your play, doing it on a regular basis and starting with something that you're already doing will help give you that confidence to really stand up and say, yes, this thing that I do is good, I am doing it regularly, and I deserve your money for it because I will be delivering for you, and you can trust in me to deliver for you because I trust in myself. I think that is enough rambling for one episode, and I apologise for my usual drift. I saw a YouTube channel by a fellow who goes by the name of Riker, and I've been watching him because I've been getting into Heroes of the Storm, as you may well know. And Heroes of the Storm is an online video game, and this fellow Riker, I would love to get him on the podcast if I can. He is a freelancer, he works for a few gaming websites, and one of the things he does is put videos up on YouTube to help people play video games, because nowadays video games can be really complex little beasts, and they almost need as much coaching as a lot of other things if you're interested in playing them well. But he has a wonderful speaking voice, and he does videos, and he's a freelance writer for a couple of websites that I reckon are fantastic. So I'd love to get him on the show. And one of the things I've noticed about him is how he stays on point and on topic, and delivers presentation-wise. I wish I could be him when I grow up, and I just turned 38 recently, so, I better get cracking on that. So, yes, very quickly, touching on the mailbag is sadly empty as of today. So, folks, I would love to hear from you. Please get in touch. So let's get on to the ways that you can get in touch. And before I forget again, thank you very much for listening and watching. It does mean a lot to me that you are out there downloading this episode or streaming it off of YouTube and all the other episodes that I have done for you folks, and I do hope that they are helping you get paid to play, whether you are actually getting paid or not, or whether you are still working it out and struggling through with it. That's why I'd love to hear from you. I want to know the questions that my shows haven't answered for you, and maybe hear a little bit about some of the struggles that you're having. You know, it's nice to know for me that I'm not on my own out here doing this as much as you guys love that feeling of knowing that you're not out here on your own and doing your own things. So if you would like to get in touch, you can send me an email at podcast@robf.com.au, and no matter how you're getting in touch, if you do want to submit a question or a piece of feedback for my mailbag episode, please let me know that it's okay to read out on air. Indicate that it's a mailbag question or mailbag feedback, and also let me know whether you are okay with me giving your name or online handle, whatever it might be. So you can get in touch via Facebook or via Google+. On both places I have a company page for the Pay to Play podcast. On Facebook, I also have a group called Fans of the Pay to Play podcast. So please join, drop your comments in, come hang out. It'll be fun having you. On Twitter, my handle there is ByRobF, BYROBF. On YouTube, I have the channel there for the Pay to Play podcast, which you probably already know if you're watching this video. In any form of social media, if you could like, favorite, +1, share, comment, retweet, get the word out there, because it will help get the Pay to Play podcast in front of the eyes and between the ears of the people who need to hear it and will, pardon me, whopping great Harley tooling off down the road. One of the problems of recording a podcast from home, sometimes you have no control over major factors like that. But don't let that stop you for crying out loud. There are so many people who try and wait for the perfect circumstances and let issues like those put them off because they believe it'll result in a substandard product. Sometimes, ultimately, like they say, the only wrong question is the one you don't ask. Sometimes the only failed product is the one that you don't put out. People, I think, will but feel better that you have flaws and that didn't stop you from doing your thing. And I'm digressing again. I want to keep on topic about how you folks can get in touch with me and support the podcast. iTunes or your favourite podcast aggregator. Please give this a review, whether it's good or bad. Be honest, although a little bit kind in the mix as well, please, because I think sometimes people mistake being honest as an excuse for venting their own anger and issues in the disguise of tough love. If you want to criticise, please try and be constructive. And I am focusing on the bad again, and I am sure that there are plenty of people out there who do enjoy this podcast and perhaps get sick of a little bit of me downplaying it. So please get out there, rate it, review it, subscribe to it on iTunes or your favourite podcast aggregator, and please, Patreon. I would love it if you could become a backer on Patreon of this podcast. It helps me cover the basic expenses, hosting and domain name fees, and it also helps me put a little bit aside to actually invest back into the podcast and make it better, whether it's by improved kit or being able to access guests that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. You can see more about some of the objectives I have for this podcast on its Patreon page, which is at www.patreon, that's Papa Alpha Tango Romeo Echo Oscar November.com/paid to play, all one word, no spaces or underscores. So on that note, this is Rob Farker telling you to stand by your play. You might be surprised by how many folks like it.